My name is Olivia, and 2 months before my first semester of college, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table and told me she'd spent my entire $38,000 college fund on my sister Michelle's wedding. She smiled when she said it, told me I'd figure something out. I nodded. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. What she didn't know was that I'd already applied for a National Merit Scholarship 6 months earlier, and the awards ceremony was in 2 weeks. I was 22 years old, and my mother Deborah had just told me my future didn't matter. My older sister Michelle's wedding had swallowed my entire $38,000 college fund. My mother thought I'd accept it. She was wrong. In 2 weeks, a national scholarship committee would read my name into a microphone in front of 800 people, with my family sitting right there in the audience. But before that moment, I need to take you back 3 years, to when the money was still mine. My grandmother, Evelyn, my father's mother, passed away when I was 15. She left $38,000 in a custodial account with my name on it. College, she wrote in the letter she left with the bank documents. For Olivia's future, nothing for Michelle. This wasn't an oversight. My grandmother had watched my mother Deborah favor my older sister for years. The bigger bedroom, the new clothes, the dance lessons, while I wore Michelle's hand-me-downs and used a laptop held together with duct tape. My grandmother noticed. She told me once, quiet, while the rest of the family was at a softball game Michelle was playing in. "You are not invisible, Olivia. I know it feels that way, but you are not." She died 6 months later. The money sat in that account, accruing interest, waiting for my 18th birthday. Deborah wanted access from the start. She argued the money should go into a general family fund. My father, Greg, pushed back at first. "It's what Mom wanted," he said. But Deborah wore him down like water on limestone. By the time I was 17, the fund was still untouched, but the conversations had shifted. "We'll reevaluate. We have to think about both girls." Michelle was engaged by then. Her fiancé, Ryan, was a nice enough guy, a business major with a sales job lined up, but my sister wanted a wedding that looked like it belonged in a magazine. The venue alone was $12,000. The dress, another $4,000. Flowers, catering, a live band, a photographer who flew in from out of state. The budget swelled like a tick, and my mother kept finding the money. She drained the home equity line. She borrowed from her own retirement account. She asked my father to take extra shifts. I watched it happen from the sidelines, invisible again, while Michelle tried on dresses and tasted cakes. One night, I asked my mother directly, "The college fund is still safe, right?" She waved her hand without looking up from the seating chart. "Of course, sweetheart. This is just wedding stuff. We'll figure college out when the time comes." Something in her voice, a lightness, told me the fund was already gone. I just didn't have proof yet. A week later, I was in the guidance counselor's office at school. Mr. Patrick, my history teacher and the one adult who always asked about my plans. He'd noticed the family dynamic years earlier. He'd noticed I never had lunch money, that my field trip forms came back unsigned, that I stayed after class because I didn't want to go home. He handed me a flyer for the Kendrick National Merit Scholarship. Full tuition, room and board, plus a $15,000 living stipend. One of the most competitive scholarships in the country. "You have the grades, Olivia. You have the essays. I'll write the recommendation. But we need to submit by November." I looked at the flyer. The deadline was 3 weeks away. I started writing that night. The application required a personal essay. I wrote about my grandmother's letter, about watching my sister's wedding consume every resource in the house, about the quiet suffocation of being the child who never asked for anything. I wrote it in one sitting, and I cried the whole time. Mr. Patrick reviewed it, made 2 small edits, and signed the recommendation. The letter he wrote, I learned later, described a student of exceptional resilience, navigating a home environment that did not prioritize her education. He didn't name names. He didn't need to. We submitted the application on November 2nd. Then I waited. The kitchen table conversation happened 2 months before the ceremony. "I've already told you what my mother said." She smiled, told me I'd figure it out, and turned back to the wedding binder. What I didn't say before is what happened next. I went to my room, closed the door, and checked my email. There it was, buried in my inbox under a dozen unread messages. A subject line from the Kendrick Foundation. "Congratulations, Olivia. You have been selected as a finalist. The awards ceremony would be held on March 15th at the Ridgemont Convention Center. Finalists and their families were invited to attend." I stared at the screen. My mother didn't know I'd applied. My sister didn't know. But in 6 weeks, we would all be sitting in an auditorium together, not for me, but because Michelle's fiancé Ryan was receiving a regional sales award that same night, same venue, same auditorium, a complete coincidence. My family was already planning to be there. They just didn't know whose name was really going to be called. That email sat in my inbox like a live grenade. I read it 6 times that night, each word burning brighter. Kendrick National Merit Scholarship. Finalist, full tuition, room and board living stipend. My fingers trembled over the keyboard. I wanted to scream it through the walls, but I knew better. If my mother found out, she'd find a way to poison it. She'd call the committee, claim I was unstable, fabricate something. Deborah didn't just neglect me. She erased me when it was convenient. So I closed the laptop, took a breath, and decided. Nobody in that house would know until the microphone was in my hand. The next morning, the wedding machine was already running at full speed. I came downstairs to find the kitchen table buried under sample invitations, ribbon swatches, and 3 different cake brochures. Michelle was on FaceTime with a florist, her voice pitched in that performative excitement she used when she wanted everyone to know she was the center of the universe. Deborah was on the phone with the venue coordinator, packing, nodding, laughing. I poured cereal. Nobody looked up. At one point, Deborah covered the receiver and turned to me. Olivia, honey, the caterer needs another deposit. I'm transferring the last of the savings. She said it like it was no more significant than ordering pizza. I kept my voice even. Grandma's savings, you mean? Her smile didn't flicker. We don't need to dwell on that. Michelle needs this. She's getting married once. You'll have plenty of time to figure out college or, whatever you decide to do. She went back to the call. I looked at my cereal, the flakes going soggy, and thought I already have. That afternoon, I met Mr. Patrick in his classroom during lunch. He was grading essays with a red pen that had teeth marks on the cap. I told him I was a finalist. He set the pen down slowly, like it might shatter, and his face broke into the kind of smile I'd only ever seen on my grandmother's face, proud without condition. Olivia, that is incredible. The finalist weekend is in 2 weeks, over in Evanston. Foundation pays for everything, but I need to be there from Friday to Sunday. My parents won't let me go if they know what it's really for. He leaned back. Then we won't tell them. He drafted a permission slip for a college readiness retreat, signed it as the school's faculty sponsor, and emailed it to my mother with a note about how I'd been selected for this honor. She replied within the hour, sure, whatever, as long as she's back by Sunday for the bridal shower setup. I read her words on his screen. She didn't ask a single question. The finalist weekend was the first time I had ever been on a college campus. I walked across the quad under old oak trees, and the air smelled like fresh coffee and cut grass, and something I didn't have a name for yet, maybe possibility. I met other finalists, kids with stories just as sharp as mine. One girl had been homeless her junior year. A boy had immigrated alone at 13. And yet here we all were, wearing name tags and trying not to cry during the welcome speech. The interviews were intense. I sat in front of a panel of 5 professors and told them about my grandmother's letter, the custodial account, the wedding, the quiet way my mother had decided I wasn't a priority. One of the professors, an older woman with gray streaks and kind eyes, asked me, "What do you want to do with this scholarship, Olivia, if you get it?" I didn't hesitate. "I want to become the kind of teacher my grandmother would have been proud of." She nodded, and I saw her write something long on her notepad. On the bus ride home Sunday evening, I stared out the window at the dark fields and I let myself imagine it. A dorm room, a desk with my name on the syllabus, a mailbox. Somewhere I wasn't invisible. When I got home, the bridal shower was in full planning mode. Michelle was sitting on the floor with a glue gun and dozens of centerpieces. She pointed at a box of ribbons. "You're late. Start cutting." I put down my bag. Inside it was a letter the foundation had given me on the way out, confirming my spot at the awards ceremony. I didn't pull it out. I knelt down and started cutting. Every snip of the scissors felt like a countdown. The week before the ceremony, the tension in the house was unbearable. The wedding was now 10 days away, and money had run completely dry. Deborah had maxed out the credit cards. She was on the phone with her sister, complaining loudly about how much everything cost and how no one appreciated what she was doing. I overheard her say, Olivia's college fund was supposed to cover the whole thing, but of course it wasn't enough. She said it like I'd shortchanged her by existing. Later that night, I was in my room reviewing the ceremony agenda the foundation had emailed. It showed the program order. Regional sales awards first, then the scholarship announcement. My name was printed in bold under the heading Kendrick National Merit Scholar. I stared at it until the words blurred. My phone buzzed. It was my mother. "Can you come help with the seating chart?" I closed the email. Sure. The night before the ceremony, I barely slept. The convention center was 30 miles away in Ridgemont. My family was driving together in my mother's minivan, the same one that still had just married soaped on the back window from my sister's bridal shower trip. I had laid out my only nice outfit, a soft blue blouse and dark slacks. My mother had asked why I was dressing up for Ryan's little award thing. "Because I want to look like I belong there," I said. She'd shrugged. "Just don't outshine the bride-to-be." Michelle had laughed from the couch, a sharp little sound. As if. At 9 the next morning, we pulled out of the driveway. My father was driving, my mother in the passenger seat, Michelle next to me in the back, texting Ryan. They were talking about the after-party, about whether the award would come with a bonus, about how proud they were of him. I sat with my bag on my lap, feeling the folded letter inside it, the one I'd printed and signed and returned by email a week earlier, the one that said I had accepted the full-ride scholarship and the $15,000 living stipend that would make me financially independent the moment the check was issued. Nobody in that car knew. In an hour, 800 people would hear my name. And every single lie my mother had told me about my own worth was about to collapse in front of her. The convention center rose out of the Ridgemont skyline like a glass cathedral, all reflective windows and a soaring atrium visible from the parking lot. My father pulled the minivan into a spot near the back, and Michelle immediately started fussing with her hair in the visor mirror. Ryan was already inside, she said, probably nervous. Deborah said something about how proud she was of him. None of them said a word to me. I stepped out of the car, bag clutched to my side, and felt the folded acceptance letter press against my ribs through the fabric. I had memorized every line. "The scholarship committee is pleased to award you the Kendrick National Merit Scholarship, including full tuition, room and board, and a living stipend of $15,000. The living stipend was key. It wasn't tied to tuition. It was a direct disbursement, paid to me at the start of each semester. I wouldn't need Deborah's permission. I wouldn't even need a cosigner. We walked through the lobby past a sign that read, "Ridgemont Regional Excellence Awards Main Auditorium." To the right, a separate placard, "Kendrick National Merit Scholarship Presentation, 7:30 p.m. My mother didn't even glance at it. We found our seats in the middle section, about 12 rows from the stage. Ryan was in the front row with the other award recipients. The auditorium filled quickly, 800 people in navy blue seats under a ceiling strung with theatrical lights. My mother chatted with Ryan's parents, who had flown in from Ohio. My father studied the program. Michelle scrolled through her phone, occasionally holding it up to show someone a photo of the wedding venue. I sat perfectly still, watching the stage. Ryan's award came first, about halfway through the program, Regional Sales Rookie of the Year. He walked up to polite applause, shook hands with a man in a gray suit, and gave a short speech thanking his mentors and his soon-to-be wife. Michelle beamed. Deborah wiped a tear. I clapped too, because I was expected to, and because I was counting down the minutes until 7:30. When the sales awards ended, the MC, a woman in a navy dress, returned to the podium. "And now, a special presentation from the Kendrick Foundation." I felt my heart shift gears. Beside me, Deborah leaned over to my father and whispered, "Kendrick, that's that big scholarship, right? Probably some local kids." My father nodded. Michelle was already distracted by her phone again. The MC introduced the foundation's executive director, a tall man with silver hair named Dr. Warren Hayes. He walked to the microphone carrying a single sealed envelope, no briefcase, no papers, just the one envelope. "Every year, the Kendrick Foundation selects one student from our national pool of finalists for a full-ride scholarship and living stipend. This year's recipient is a young woman of extraordinary resilience whose personal essay moved our entire selection committee to tears. She wrote about loss, about being overlooked, and about a grandmother who believed in her when no one else did." My mother's head tilted slightly. Something flickered in her expression, not recognition yet, but a distant alarm. Dr. Hayes continued. "She is a student at a public high school you've never heard of, and she has spent years quietly excelling while navigating a home environment that did not prioritize her education." That is a direct quote from her recommending teacher, a Mr. Patrick, who wrote to us that this young woman deserved a future far brighter than the one her circumstances had planned for her. Deborah's face drained. She knew that teacher's name. She had met him once at a parent-teacher conference when I was a sophomore. She dismissed him as overly involved. Now his words were being read aloud to 800 people. Dr. Hayes finally opened the envelope. "It is my great honor to present the Kendrick National Merit Scholarship to Olivia Chen." For 1/2 second, the auditorium was silent. Then applause erupted. I didn't stand right away. I looked at my mother. Her mouth was open, lips forming shapes without sound. Her skin had gone the color of old paper. Michelle turned to me, phone still in hand, eyes wide with confusion. "What? You applied for something? Why didn't you tell us?" I didn't answer. I stood, smoothed my blouse, and walked toward the stage. The applause grew louder as I climbed the steps. Dr. Hayes shook my hand and handed me the envelope. Then he gestured to the microphone. I turned to face the crowd. I could see the table of foundation board members in the front row, clapping. I could see Mr. Patrick, who had driven all the way to Ridgemont without telling me, standing near the side exit with tears running down his face. And I could see my family, 12 rows back. My father looked stunned but not unhappy. Michelle looked like someone had stolen a spotlight she'd already paid for. And Deborah, she was gripping the armrests of her chair, her knuckles white, her expression a perfect dam of fury about to break. "Thank you," I said into the microphone. My voice didn't shake. "I want to dedicate this to my grandmother, Evelyn Chen, who saw me and believed in me. She left me a gift that was supposed to get me here. That gift was taken from me, but her faith in me was something no one could take." I paused. The silence in the room was total. "So this is for her. And for every student who's ever been told they'll just have to figure it out." I stepped back from the mic. The applause returned, louder this time. I didn't look at my family again until I was back in my seat. The moment I sat down, Deborah's whisper was a blade. "You humiliated me." I leaned close, keeping my eyes on the stage. "You stole my college fund. I just got it back, with interest." She said nothing else for the rest of the ceremony, but her silence was a pressure system building. When the program ended and people began filing out, several parents I'd never met stopped to congratulate me. Some said they'd heard the story. One woman said, "Your grandmother must be so proud." Deborah stood rigidly behind me, her smile a rictus. Michelle had already stormed toward the lobby. Ryan followed, looking bewildered. Outside in the parking lot, the dam broke. Michelle spun on me. "You planned this. You knew you were going to win and you didn't say a word because you wanted to ruin my wedding week." I looked at her. "Michelle, you got a $40,000 wedding. I got a scholarship I applied for in secret because Mom drained every account. The only thing I ruined was her narrative." Deborah stepped between us. Her voice was low and cold. "That teacher of yours, Mr. Patrick, he's been filling your head with ideas for years, hasn't he? I knew he was trouble. I should have pulled you from that school." I laughed, a sharp sound that surprised even me. "He noticed I was struggling. He noticed before you did. His recommendation letter is the reason I'm standing here. And the stipend, Mom, the stipend is $15,000. It's paid directly to me. I don't need your permission. I don't need your roof. And I don't need you." My father, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke. "Deborah, what did you do with that account?" His voice was quiet, but it carried. Deborah's face tightened. "I spent it on your daughter's wedding, Greg, because that was the priority we decided on." "We decided," he shook his head. "You decided, you told me the fund was still there. You told me Olivia was fine." Michelle started crying then, not out of guilt, but out of the sudden, dawning awareness that her wedding, her perfect day, was now permanently attached to this story. People would remember. The scholarship girl, the stolen fund, the mother who smiled. I turned and started walking toward the parking lot shuttle, alone. Behind me, my family was still arguing, voices rising and falling against the hum of the convention center lights. I didn't look back. In my hand, I held the envelope with the scholarship details, the housing forms already loaded on my phone, and the first check was scheduled to clear in 2 weeks. I had a dorm room waiting for me 20 miles from here. And for the first time in my life, I was walking toward something that belonged entirely to me. I took the shuttle back to my house alone that night. My parents and Michelle drove separately, and when I walked through the front door, the living room was a war zone. Deborah was packing, her heels clicking hard against the hardwood. Michelle was on the couch, mascara streaked down her cheeks, still crying but angrier now than hurt. My father stood by the window, arms crossed, staring out into the dark like he was looking for a version of his wife that made sense. The wedding binder lay open on the coffee table, half its pages torn out. I later learned that during the drive home, my father had demanded to see every bank statement relating to the college fund. What he found was a withdrawal history that started 18 months earlier, in small amounts at first, then larger, until the account hit zero 6 weeks after Michelle got engaged. Deborah hadn't just spent my money. She had lied to him systematically for a year and a half. He turned away from the window and spoke, not to me, but to her. "You told me she'd be fine. You told me we had it covered." Deborah's voice cracked but held its edge. "I did what I had to do." Michelle needed this wedding. You know how important appearances are in Ryan's family. Olivia will get loans like everyone else. My father finally looked at me. "Olivia, I am so sorry." Those 4 words from a man who had spent years letting Deborah run the house like a monarchy meant more than the scholarship itself. Michelle stood up, snatched her purse off the table. "You've ruined everything," she said, and I don't know if she meant me or my mother or both. She slammed the door on her way out. The next 2 weeks were a strange, suspended time. The wedding still happened, on a Saturday at the venue Deborah had nearly bankrupted us for. I attended, because not attending would have been its own headline, and because I wanted to sit in the back row and watch the flower arrangements that my college fund had bought. Ryan's parents made polite conversation. The bride smiled for photos. Deborah played the gracious mother of the bride, but her eyes had a haunted quality now. Several of the guests had been at the awards ceremony, and the story had traveled. I overheard one of my mother's cousins whisper, "Is it true she spent the girls' college money?" The answer was a silent nod. Public exposure has a way of doing what private argument cannot. Deborah couldn't spin her way out of 800 witnesses. The day after the wedding, I packed. Not a lot, just 2 suitcases and a box of books. My dorm assignment had arrived, a single room in Callaway Hall on the east side of campus. The stipend check had cleared the previous Friday. I opened a bank account in my own name, no cosigner, no joint access. $15,000, enough for supplies, a meal plan, and the kind of freedom I had never known. My father helped me load the car. He hugged me at the curb, and his voice was thick. "Your grandmother would be proud." I didn't say what I was thinking, that my grandmother had tried to protect me but couldn't, not completely, because the money she left had a vulnerability she couldn't foresee. But I had found another way. On move-in day, Mr. Patrick showed up. He had driven 2 hours to bring me a framed copy of his recommendation letter and a small, sealed envelope. "Your grandmother left this with the school records," he said. "She told me to give it to you if you ever made it to college." I opened it sitting on my new bed, surrounded by unpacked boxes and the smell of fresh paint. Inside was a letter in my grandmother's handwriting, dated the year she died. It said, "Olivia, if you're reading this, you did it. I knew you would. I couldn't guarantee the money would still be there, so I asked Mr. Patrick to watch over you. I told him you were special. I told him to help you find a way. Your future was never about a bank account. It was about the fire inside you that your mother never learned to see. But I saw it. Now go prove me right." I read it twice. Then I taped it to the wall above my desk, next to the scholarship certificate. Outside my window, the campus was waking up for the fall semester. Students were hauling duffel bags across the quad, and somewhere a guitar was playing through an open window. I sat on the bed and let myself feel it. Not anger, not even vindication, just the quiet, solid weight of arrival. My mother had tried to erase my future, and instead she had forced me to build one that was stronger than any inheritance. The stipend meant I didn't need her money. The scholarship meant I didn't need her approval. And the letter from my grandmother meant I had never been invisible, not to the person who mattered most. A few weeks later, I learned that my father had filed for separation. Quietly, without drama, he moved into a small apartment near his office. Michelle's marriage, last I heard, was strained, not because of the scholarship, but because Ryan's family had started asking uncomfortable questions about the finances behind the wedding. The facade Deborah had built was crumbling brick by brick. I wasn't there to see it. I was in a lecture hall taking notes on developmental psychology, planning to become the teacher my grandmother had always known I could be. Here's what I learned, sitting in that lecture hall, looking at my grandmother's letter taped above my desk. Money can be taken from you. Safety nets can dissolve overnight. People who are supposed to protect you can decide you're not the priority. But your future isn't a bank account, and your worth isn't determined by someone else's choices. My grandmother knew that. Mr. Patrick knew that. I had to walk through a fire to learn it, but now I know it too. If you're watching this and you feel invisible, I need you to hear me. The people who truly see you will show up. They might be a teacher, a grandparent, a friend, someone who sees past the neglect and recognizes the fight in you. Don't let the people who overlook you write your ending. That's yours. It always was. And to the Debras of the world, you can drain a fund. You can plan a wedding. You can smile through a lie. But you can't silence a story that refuses to end the way you wrote it. If this story stayed with you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Drop your city and local time in the comments. I read them. And here's my question for you. What is one promise you've kept to yourself, even when no one else believed in it? Tell me. I want to know.